Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru Lisa, Uhuru Becky, Uhuru everybody who's joining us on Facebook, YouTube, and any other platforms. This is Jesse with the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. And we're going live today to discuss the ongoing situation in Minneapolis. And I'm joined today by two Solidarity comrades, Lisa and Becky, who are both right there in Minneapolis and who have been out on the ground over the past few weeks. We're looking forward to hearing from them, speaking with them. And I want to start off by, again, thanking everybody for tuning in today to this discussion led by the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which is the organization of white people working under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. This is the Burning Spear newspaper, the African People's Socialist Party's official newspaper. We have the honor to work under the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Deputy Chair Ona Zanea Yeshitela and the Central Committee of the African People's Socialist Party. We want to salute our leadership. We want to salute the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Penny Hess. USM is the mass organization of APSC that was created 50 years ago to organize those of us in the white population to take a principled stand with the African liberation movement under the leadership of the African working class. And again, thank you to everybody for joining us for this discussion. I'm with comrades here from Minneapolis, and we want to start off by expressing our deepest unconditional solidarity and unity with the African community, with the indigenous people, with the Somali population, the Mexican population, and all oppressed and colonized peoples worldwide, and in particular in this moment, right there in the state of Minnesota, in the city of Minneapolis, who have been engaged in a fierce struggle and resistance to this vicious escalation of colonial terror and occupation of their communities by this entity referred to as ICE. This is in Minneapolis, which, as we know, is where George Floyd was murdered in 2020 and where the incredible African uprisings that shook the whole world originated in that time period. And we also want to recognize Renee Good and Alex Pretti, who are two white people who, in their efforts to stand with the oppressed people in Minneapolis, in their efforts to function as legal observers and to stand with and defend other people who have been out there protesting, actually lost their lives at the hands of the murderous ICE federal agents that have been occupying Minneapolis. And we hold up Renee Good and Alex Pretti and the stand that they took in the same way that we hold up the stand of Aaron Bushnell, the U.S. Air Force member who lost his life in a courageous act of protest to the U.S.-backed genocide in Gaza about a year ago. We salute these three comrades for representing the stand of fighting to be in solidarity with African and oppressed peoples around the world, of taking a stand against colonialism, of saying no more genocide in our name. And what we recognize from the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, as Chairman Omali Yeshitela teaches us, that this struggle is bigger than Trump, that this is an example of colonialism, that the United States is a settler colony. It is actually the premier leading original settler colony in the world, as the chairman explains, that this is a system that was born from the enslavement of African people, the genocide against the indigenous people, and the theft of their land. And that long before Trump, who represents an intensification of the crisis of the system, the Somali community in Minneapolis was already under attack by ICE and the FBI, facing harassment, entrapment, and arrests on a regular basis, along with the African community throughout this country and indigenous and colonized peoples throughout this country as well. And that what white people, as the chairman teaches us, what white people call fascism is really that moment at which the conditions that are normally reserved for African and colonized peoples begin to be experienced, or white people begin to fear that we may experience a fraction of what is normal, the violence and repression that is normal under colonialism for African and indigenous people every single day. So if we truly want to stand against fascism, if we truly want to stand against what Trump represents, what this government represents, it means joining the struggle against colonialism. It means joining in solidarity with African liberation, with indigenous liberation, with the anti-colonial struggle and resistance around the world. And we appreciate and salute the stand of people like Renee Good and Alex Pretti and Aaron Bushnell, because we believe they represent the millions of white people who are out there who want to take this stand, who want to say no more genocide in our name, who want to end our complicity with a system, with a government, with a ruling class that commits horrors and atrocities in the US and around the world for our presumed benefit. And we unite with the call by the African People's Socialist Party that in this period, there are protests happening, and they're happening everywhere, and we have to be at those protests. But the call from the party is that at the same time, we win other white people to recognize that this moment in history demands that we go beyond protest, that we build organization under the leadership of the African Revolution, that we build material solidarity with African and oppressed peoples, that we fight for reparations to African people. Reparations are owed for hundreds of years of ongoing colonial slaughter and genocide and enslavement and oppression that continues to this day. This is the land of the indigenous people. It is still their land. All of the resources of Africa, all of the land of the indigenous people must go back into the hands of the original producers and owners. So we say ICE must go, colonialism must go. Long live Renee Good, long live Alex Pretti, long live Aaron Bushnell. Victory to African and indigenous peoples. And we call on white people to join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement today. Take action for reparations today. Build solidarity under the leadership of the African Revolution today. You can go to uhurusolidarity.org/join to become a member today. So with that, I'm very honored to be joined by Lisa and Becky, two courageous comrades in the Solidarity Movement who've been on the ground, who are going to talk to us a little bit about what's going on in Minneapolis behind the headlines that we see in the news, a little bit of the background on that. So we want to start with you, Lisa.
All right, Uhuru, Jesse, thank you so much for hosting this live, and just salute to the African People's Socialist Party, Chairman Omali Shatella, and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And it's just an honor to be a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Just because I don't know the extent to which people outside of Minneapolis have a sense of what has been going on. I mean, I know it has been in the news and made national headlines, but I just wanted to kind of go through a timeline of what's been happening recently. And with this thing that's called Operation Metro Surge, started here in early December. And then by early January, there were other forms of attack that were starting to come out. There was like this viral video by this right-wing YouTuber named Nick Shirley. He was visiting Somali-run daycare centers when they were closed and claiming that they were engaging in fraud. It was really outrageous. And then based on that, Trump cut funding for childcare subsidies here. And then like that same week, I mean, it was just one day after another, there was just more harassment of Somali-run daycare centers and businesses. It was really vicious. And then that was kind of like the excuse that the administration used for a major escalation that began in early January with sending 2,000 agents. And then this guy, Greg Bovino, some kind of director of border patrol on the ground. And then, so that was like around January 4th or that week. And then by Wednesday of that week, they had killed Renee Good. A few days later, there was a viral video that showed federal agents invading a home in the Black community, busting down their door when children were present, stealing the father in that family, kidnapping him. And then, so that was January 11th. January 14th, ICE shot someone that they characterize as an immigrant from Venezuela on the north side of Minneapolis, which is the Black community. And, so then there was a lot of protesters and tons of agents in the community that night. And there was so much tear gas right in that neighborhood. There was a horrible story of an African family that was driving home from their son's basketball game, and they couldn't get home because of the road being blocked. And then there was so much tear gas, it was coming into their car, and their 6-month-old stopped breathing. And they survived, but it was a very close call and horrific for that family. And so that's just like one of the so many stories of the kind of terror, colonial terror that ICE is waging here. I'm missing a lot of details, but I'm just trying to touch on some key points. This past Friday, it was a general strike that was called and organized. People were called on to don't go to work, don't go to school. Many businesses closed. There was wide participation in this general strike to send a message of opposition to what ICE is doing. People probably saw images of the big march that was downtown. There were actions all around the city as well. Then the next day, on Saturday, Alex Pretti, a 37-year-old observer, was shot and killed by federal agents. And just today, I learned there is another call for a general strike for this Friday to be a nationwide strike. So I'm just seeing a headline that says the Minnesota Somali and Black student groups call for a nationwide general strike on this Friday, January 30th. So just to say, January has had ongoing ICE raids, kidnapping people in the Twin Cities and the surrounding suburbs, targeting non-white people with accents, also brutality against protesters. You get detained for just being there. But if you've seen videos, people are talking about the way they separate, like white people or a lot of white people and citizens and those who do not have the documents or whatever, and just the different kind of conditions that are in each of those, and just the horrific conditions in the detention center. That's the Whipple building where there's been ongoing protests. Just blatant First Amendment rights violations, rights that we're supposed to have, but they're just being violated. Also, the community fight back has been amazing, and just so much salute to that. And I was listening to a radio show this morning where one of the local organizations called COPAL, Communities Organizing Latina Power and Action, was explaining how they really started dealing with this as soon as Trump got elected for this last time, based on the threats he was making as he was running. So they were preparing for worst case scenarios for immigrants and those who would be targeted, starting Know Your Rights trainings and monitoring, but then created the Legal Observer Program for those, in the white community and others not directly impacted who want to do something. And so that's where we see a lot of people doing this legal observation work, filming, and then also reporting on when they see ICE agents. There's a website, iceout.org, where you can, submit reports, and it's very, check out that site. You can see the map and where they are, where they've been that day, to get a sense of the scale of it. Mm-hmm. And then, so legal observing, rapid response work, also other forms of support. So many people are just involved in helping get groceries and rides for people who need to stay home, and people donating to those efforts. there's a lot of the legal community, you know, lawyers and things like that, immigration lawyers that are very, you know, engaged and activated. And it's just become a widespread mainstream kind of resistance to what ICE is doing.
Right.
And yeah, so that's just kind of like my best attempt at some a summary of where we're at. And I can say more, but
That's
I'll
great.
stop there. Uhuru.
Thank you, Lisa. Uhuru. And before we turn to Becky, I just want to thank everybody who's tuning in. Indigo, Jackson, Wendy, and the Southern Regional Rep of the African People's Socialist Party, Jainaba Lumumba Uhuru. It's an honor to have you with us. And for everybody who's tuning in, encourage you to share, spread the word, spread this far and wide, and like and subscribe. Subscribe to the Uhuru Solidarity YouTube channel. Follow our Facebook page, our Twitter, our Instagram, and spread the word to others. So please share, like, and subscribe. Spread the word. And we have a question from Rep. Jen about live captions. That would be very good. We can see if we can get that activated. In the meantime, let's go ahead and turn to Comrade Becky, Uhuru Becky.
Uhuru. I really appreciate you, Chair Jesse, for organizing this, and Lisa for all of your work as well, and for the party for being here during this time when living here in Minneapolis, it's you know, it's very intense. I don't live in the center of the action, but like not that far away. These are neighborhoods that I know very well, and so it's having a place to participate with people to get a broader understanding of the colonial terror that's taking place, as well as to have actions that can help build for a better future by contributing reparations. All of that is really, really meaningful to me. So just in terms of the what's happening here, I would add a couple of things. All of this is happening in the freezing cold. So,
right.
You know, I commend all of these who are out there resisting in all of the forms, and who are delivering groceries and patrolling and all of the things that they're doing. That I unite with that, and I have tried to participate to the extent that I can in those actions as well. And then too, when the attacks happened on the Somali community, on the viral video about these daycare centers, it was one of those really kind of wake up, or like some things just hit you very deeply, because I was a childcare provider in the Twin Cities many years ago. That's part of my background, and I know that these daycare centers are there taking care of children. I know that they are. That's what they do. And I know that there was funding made available during the COVID. You know, this was after my time in daycare, but I know the process. You can get assistance for food, you know, for getting kids breakfasts and lunches. You know, there is support for that. And so I dug into that, like, what was this so-called fraud all about? This Somali fraud. There was this, like, you know, these memes out there, and, you know, came to understand that this was actually led. There was a big scandal like 5 years ago. And in the end, a white woman named Amy Bach was put in jail as the ringleader of a fraudulent scheme of taking money from federal money for food for children and siphoning it into people's pockets, many of whom were Somali, yes, but who were owners, but she herself became very enriched. So fortunately, she's in jail, but now she's also crying to the media that, like, she's going to, she meant it was just a mistake, etc. She's, you know, looking for pity, and the media is playing into that, like, she's going to get forgiveness and she's going to get a short term, but it's all just a very turbulent time. And again, just coming back to the beginning, I really appreciate having an overall context for understanding that this is colonial terror. This has been happening. It's eye-opening when people that look like me are killed. It's another level of a wake-up call. But African people die on a regular basis. When Alex was killed, I was reminded of Philando Castile, who lost his life while driving. He was driving and was pulled over, and he was carrying, but he was, not brandishing a gun, but he died because he had a weapon on him or because the cop felt like killing him. That was just another example of the colonial terror that rains down constantly on African Indigenous people. So I stand in solidarity with those who stand up. I really salute Renee and Alex and Aaron Bushnell for taking that brave and courageous stand. And I would invite people to join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement because it's a way that we can try to move forward from all of this and in an organized manner and try to make a big difference for the future, not just protest against, I've been protesting a lot of things for a long time. You can see that I've been around for a while. So, we need to go beyond that protest. And this is really an important time to get organized.
Uhuru. Thank you, Becky. And Rep. Janaba says, colonialism must go. Salute Chairman Amali Shatella. Long live Philando Castile. Completely unite with that. Appreciate that statement. And before we kind of wrap up here, I just want to appreciate both of you for giving us some reports from on the ground there in Minneapolis. And, I think it's important to look at one of the things that the chairman's been talking about over the last several years is part of the crisis of this colonial system that has even been acknowledged by some of this, thinking representatives of the colonial ruling class, is what they refer to as this demographic shift that's happening in the United States, where, there are projections that within 15 or 20 years, white people will be a minority population within the United States. And this is itself, as the chairman explains, a reflection of a global crisis of concern and anxiety that the colonial powers are undergoing right now, that they see the declining power of the so-called West. He talks about the Munich Security Conference a few years ago, where all these world leaders came together and talked about the looming threat of Westlessness, the decline of Western power, which is a euphemism for white power, basically. And that this is why, this is one of the things that Trump and the particular approach to managing that crisis that Trump and the sector he represents signify is an attempt to make America white again. And that's why Trump is intensifying all of these crackdowns and escalation of attacks on non-white people in the United States when it comes to so-called immigration, but at the same time giving privilege to white people from South Africa who claim to be refugees and who claim to be victims of so-called white genocide in South Africa, to bring more white people into the United States while trying to kick out as many African and indigenous people. And one of the things I've really appreciated being able to learn from the Uhuru movement is that even the whole concept of immigrants really falls apart when you understand what the United States is. That the United States is not like a lot of other countries, in the sense that the United States is a settler colonial entity, like the state of Israel, like Canada or New Zealand or Australia. It's a country that did not exist before white people came to this land and committed genocide against the indigenous people of the land and took over the land and brought enslaved African people to this land to build the entire economy on their backs. The country didn't exist. So the people who are referred to as quote unquote illegal immigrants are either indigenous people moving past a false, illegitimate colonial border to regain access to their own land, or they are colonized people from countries like Somalia that have been targeted by and bombed and savagely attacked by U.S. imperialism for decades, where it's the phrase that's used is they're chasing their resources. They come to the U.S. to try to regain access to the resources that are located in the U.S., which were stolen from them, from the country, from the place where they originally lived as a consequence of U.S. imperialist domination. So I think the whole concept of fraud and Somali people having any relationship to anything that would be called fraud is a total, smokescreen to justify this escalation of genocidal violence. Of course, it's not surprising at all that even whatever they're talking about, it turns out that it was some white woman who was actually the ringleader of it. That's not surprising at all. But even if that wasn't the case, it would be completely illegitimate and, a complete colonial lie on slander against the Somali population, who again have been targeted by the FBI, by ICE, by local police in Minneapolis long before any allegations of so-called fraud and long before Trump made his way onto the scene. So just wanted to make those comments, and again appreciate both of you for being with us. And as we wrap up, just want to go back to you, Lisa, and just ask each of you, what is your message for other white people in Minneapolis who are looking for a way to stand in solidarity with African and oppressed peoples at this critical moment?
Uhuru Jesse. Well, thank you so much. I just, before I get to that, I just want to say, thank you for what you just summed up, because it was so crystal clear in terms of just that whole accusation of fraud. Well, the two points you were making, even the term immigrant, I've been struggling a lot with that lately because it's just a word that's so being thrown around, and it doesn't capture the real relationship of people to this whole system. And so I just appreciate that. And I want to work on even the words that I use and how I use that term. And then also just the whole question of fraud. Well, APSC and USM put out an initial statement after the ICE murder of Renee Good. We also have worked on an additional statement that's going to be in the February issue of the Burning Spear newspaper that tries to go a little bit deeper into the question of the attacks on the Somali community, but also looking at, because even that question of fraud, any kind of discussion about it without talking about the history of U.S. colonialism in Somalia and the attacks on that region of Africa. I mean, you can't even say anything until you talk about that anyway. And the Burning Spear newspaper had some really good articles that go into that. So in our statement, we drew on some things from that. But anyway, so I just wanted to mention that. And then, so in terms of, what was the question again, Jesse? It was, what's our message for other white people who want to take a stand? I just say, keep doing what you're doing. And I want to encourage you to join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, especially if you're here in Minneapolis and are looking for a way to, go beyond. There's so many things happening, and the attacks are going to continue. And so that level of support is always going to be needed in these conditions. But how do we stop it in a longer term sense, in a deeper way? It has to be tied to the strategy that is being led by colonized people. And, in terms of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement being under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, they have a way forward, a long-term strategy that's about building economic and political power for African people, Black people around the whole world. And so, that we can have an impact here. We can go beyond protest and work under the leadership of the Black Liberation Movement to build power. And, we can look to the Black Power Blueprint in St. Louis, Missouri as an example of how that is being implemented on the ground, blackpowerblueprint.org, to see what they're doing. And it's very inspiring. And so there's so many ways that we can plug into that and support that effort that's part of a long-term strategy for freedom and liberation for Black people, African people, and all colonized people. And as a consequence, it's freedom for us as well from this horrible system that is, causing so much terror and pain right now.
Uhuru, Becky.
Uhuru, I unite with what you have both said so eloquently, and I would likewise just encourage people to join up with the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. There are opportunities to learn, as so much of the knowledge that's been shared today has come from the African People's Socialist Party, and they have created a way where white people can join in solidarity with Black power, and that is very material. So we can learn and we can practice, and there are lots of volunteer opportunities. People can bring their skills and hone their skills in the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. If you have graphic skills or you want to learn how to do things, there are lots of ways to contribute as a form of reparations, which is how we can help rebuild Black power.
Yes.
Uhuru.
Absolutely. And we're going to be going live a lot more from this page. So please subscribe, share, like this, and comment and help get the word out. Thanks to Virginia and Louisville, Wendy in Oakland, Rep. Janaba, who wrote, "An anti-colonial future is the future we deserve to build." Thank you to everybody who's been tuning in with us. And again, we're going to be going live at least once a week this year. And a lot of our lives are going to be from the reparations investment company's work on the north side of St. Louis. This is the newest and most significant initiative that the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is going to be building this year, a campaign to support the renovation of North St. Louis under the leadership of the African community, renovation that contends with gentrification. It contributes towards the strategy of the African Revolution to build anti-colonial power in the hands of the African working class, to negate the power of the colonizer, to negate the power of ICE, to negate the power of Trump and the whole system that he represents. That's what this is about. It's the ultimate act of protest against this social system that we despise, that we want to have nothing to do with. We want to be a part of the future that African and colonized peoples are working to build. And we have 2 events coming up that will make the link, as Wendy Snyder says in the chat here, make the link between African and Indigenous people having power over their own lives and the critical stand and role of reparations to African people. One of them is on this upcoming Wednesday night, January 28th, hosted by the African People's Solidarity Committee. It's called "Why the Struggle for Black Power in St. Louis Matters for the Whole World." This will feature Chairman Amalia Shatella and Chairwoman Penny Hess. It's at 6:30 Central. You can go to apscuhuru.org/register. And we also want to let people know that at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Berkeley this Saturday, if you go to tinyurl.com/reparations event Jan 31, you can find information about a panel discussion happening there called "Reparations, a Critical Question for Our Times," which will feature among its panelists Bakri Olatunji from the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and Kara Locke from the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and the Reparations Legacy Project. And Wendy points out that ICE also kidnapped a 5-year-old boy in Minneapolis. That is part of the hideous, horrific colonial terror that goes on every single day under this country, under this system, under this government. And that is why we say colonialism must go. We call on white people to join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Go to uhurusolidarity.org/join, build reparations to African people, build white solidarity with Black power. And Camille, a comrade here in St. Louis, who's actually from Minneapolis, says, "So powerful that the Uhuru movement as a whole makes real change on the ground, going beyond protests to make material change. Salute to APSP leadership." That seems like a perfect note on which to close this out. Salute to our leadership. Salute to Chairman Amalia Shatella. Salute to Deputy Chair Ona Zenea Shatella. Salute to the African People's Socialist Party. victory to African people, victory to Indigenous people, unity through reparations.
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 Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.